Thanks to Sarah Murray reporting there. Well, I want to bring in CNN's Katelyn Polantz, who joins us from Miami. Good to see you again, Katelyn. So Trump, of course, making history as the first former U.S. president to be criminally charged twice. Just take us through the restrictions facing the former president right now.
Well, Lynda, Donald Trump is now in the criminal justice system. He has agreed that he will do what the court says now that he has been arrested and he is progressing to trial. So he entered that not guilty plea yesterday, and there were some formalities put in place. Those included a prohibition on him speaking to other people related to the case, potentially witnesses, as well as his co-defendant, Walt Nauta, about the details of the case. They are not allowed to talk about details of the case. The Justice Department has to provide a list of who those people will be ultimately, but it was something that Trump's lawyers really did not want to be put in place over the former president. They were saying in court that everything about his life is this case. It is witnesses that are part of his protective detail in the Secret Service. There are witnesses who still work for him. His co-defendant, Walt Nauta, travels with him every single day, even was with him at campaign stops after the proceeding yesterday and then later on. And so all of this will come together, and it will be a situation where the Justice Department is watching, and the court is watching what Donald Trump says and does from now on. He also has to make sure he shows up for the case again, though he doesn't have any travel restrictions. Sometimes they take away your passport, make it so you really can't travel much. He is allowed to travel freely, both inside the country as well as overseas, abroad. And so that is where the restrictions are. But now there's also a legal process that will happen. There is going to be information turned over to his defense team, and there's going to be lots of criminal arguments, legal defense arguments that both his team and the Justice Department will raise with the judge.
And of course, Katelyn, just a week ago, Trump lost two of his attorneys who quit the case. Talk to us about who's representing the former U.S. president now.
Well, there's two attorneys that are not unfamiliar with Donald Trump and the people around him. So his lead attorney yesterday in court is a man named Todd Blanche, who previously was quite successful representing others in Donald Trump's political circles. He got Paul Manafort, his 2016 campaign chairman, out of a prosecution in New York State, and had been representing others very close to Trump in related investigations like the January 6th criminal investigations. So Blanche has come in, and he is taking the lead in representing Trump now, though he may need to get up to speed a little bit on this case. There's also a man named Chris Kise, who came into this case much earlier, back whenever Trump was challenging some things after the FBI searched Mar-a-Lago last August. And Chris Kise, he was in court yesterday as well. The reason he was in court is because he's based in Florida, and in order for Donald Trump to appear in court in Florida and speak to the judge, he does need to have a lawyer in the state of Florida.
All right, Katelyn Polantz for us in Miami, staying across all those developments there. Thanks so much.